Soon NATO will be the 32nd freestanding, have 32 freestanding members standing together to defend our people and our territory.
Yes, and the bad guys of the world were quaking in their boots as Joe Biden, with his grandfatherly appeal, put the fear of dog into them. You know, a dog is their co-pilot. I saw that on the bumper sticker. They got, that's the bumper sticker on the White House, the presidential limousine, the Beast. Says, dog is my co-pilot. Kind of weird. Also says, be patient, student driver. Classified documents in trunk. All kinds of bumper stickers. If the Beast, you know, the presidential limousine, if the presidential limousine had bumper stickers, I think that'd be a pretty good start. Well, happy Thursday to you and welcome once again. Lunch Bucket Joe. What a sad situation. That's an Elton John lyric there, isn't it? I think that works. And he is he home yet from Europe? I saw him getting on the Air Force One from the lower stairs. They didn't have the big stairs because they didn't want him to trip and fall. So the 747, the Air Force One, there are two of them, but the one that he took over to Europe, he was getting back on the airplane yesterday, and they didn't have the normal steps going up to the upstairs of the 747. There is a downstairs in the belly of the plane. There is a fold-down kind of panel beneath the airplane, and it allows you to get into the belly of the plane. And then once you're in the belly of the plane, I've been in there on Air Force One, one of the two current Air Force Ones, and George W. Bush's exercise bicycle was still down there, bolted to the frame of the airplane down in the belly of the plane. George W. used to like to go down there during long flights and do the exercise bicycle. But Barack Obama, he just had a bunch of Nico gum in the in the desk in the flying oval, as they call it, the president's office in Air Force One. But I digress. Joe Biden got on the steps that just a few little steps that take you into the belly of the plane. Then somebody has to walk him up the interior stairs inside the airplane. But they apparently didn't want him to embarrass himself falling down. You know, he's fallen on multiple occasions walking up the steps to Air Force One. And I think, you know, he needed a lot of nap time on this trip. He missed the NATO dinner, the NATO gathering in Vilnius, Lithuania. And he missed the dinner because they said, what do you want? He's already worked 4 long days. Of course, the first day he was on the beach in Delaware. That's one of his hard work days. The second day, I think they were flying to Europe aboard Air Force One, where there's a bedroom for the president. It's kind of a funny bedroom, though. It's in the nose of the plane, and it's really just kind of a big V-shaped couch. Not the most comfortable bed you're going to find. You know, the Arab kings, they have much more luxurious airliners, private airliners, but that's not important now either. So Joe Biden is on the way back. Also in Vilnius, did you hear him? He talked a lot about the weather. Weather is kooky. We're going to have to do something to save the climate because the climate is real bad, and we don't like a real bad climate. We like a real good climate. So we're going to fix it, make it better. This is what they're telling people. And some people, you know, if you're dumb enough, you might believe them. Hey, the government's going to make the climate better. This is going to be great. God, the Republicans don't want to make the climate better. The Democrats want to make the climate better. It's going to cost us a lot of money, and we're going to have to give up a lot of our freedoms and a lot of things that people have worked for centuries to acquire on the planet Earth. But we're going to do away with all that. But the climate will be better. At least we'll say that it is better. It's amazing. The front page of the Washington Post today. Above the fold. Alarms. It's alarms. We got alarms. We should all be alarmed. Alarms for a planet on edge, : They love their colons. Flooding, fires, and lethal heat. It's going to be hot today in Washington, D.C., and it's big news. Now the weather's it's summertime in Washington. It's going to be 96 degrees. That's not really that uncommon. And but it's big news now because the weather is political. The Democrats have made the weather political, like gender and grammar school education and sports and Bud Light and just about everything. They've made everything political. Everything doesn't need to be political. Remember normal. Please remember normal. And if you go to the Chris Plante store, you can get T-shirts that say Remember Normal on them. Have a tasteful and discreet Chris Plante Show logo on the sleeve. And coffee mugs that say Remember Normal. They're great gifts for people who aren't normal as well. You know, family members, neighbors, friends, coworkers. Just get them a Remember Normal mug and let them look at it every day. Maybe something will click. Warmings, this is the word they have. Warming's link to extreme events is clear. What isn't, comma, experts say, comma, is when we'll act. We have to act to make, hot days cooler and cool days warmer, right? If it's going to rain, we'd like it to rain less. We'd like hailstones to be smaller. And the Chinese don't care, and neither does India, and really the rest of the world. That much. Although Germany they dabbled in this for a little while, and it was a catastrophe, But never mind that. They want that same catastrophe here: the economic, the cultural, the social, the energy catastrophe, because the Democrats are anti-energy. They're anti-fossil fuels. Oh, did you see yesterday there was kind of a congressional softball game? What was that, like an interview on MSNBC? No, an actual softball game on a softball diamond. Did any Democrat Party volunteers show up and try to shoot everyone on the field? No, fortunately, nobody did. But I guess it was the women in Congress playing softball against the women in the Washington Press Corps. And are many of them dating, Michael? Do you know how many of them are dating? It's hard to say. It is a softball, 2 softball teams. But never mind that. We'll set that aside for a moment, too. And the field was taken over by radical, anti-fossil fuels, leftists, lunatics wearing matching T-shirts. The We Hate Fossil Fuels, We Hate Energy. They also hate nuclear energy because of that Jane Fonda movie, you know. And then from like 40 years ago, and the China Syndrome. And then, the movie The China Syndrome. When I was living in Santa Barbara, California, my landlord was in that movie. He owned a mansion in Montecito. My brother Daniel and I rented out the servants' quarters. That was our apartment, servants' quarters in a big mansion in Montecito. It was kind of fun. We had parking, and Martin Fisco was the security guard in the nuclear plant, and Jack Lemmon took his gun away and said, Jack, what are you doing, Jack? All right, that's my California story of the day. But they don't like hydroelectric, that's dams, because you have to have a dam, and the dam might hurt the fish. And they don't want to hurt the fish. They just want you to send a check to Planned Parenthood because their priorities are unusual. They love, rutabagas. They'll save the rutabagas, but send a check to Planned Parenthood. So they don't like hydroelectric because you dam up a valley with a dam, and then you let the river run through the dam, and it forces the turbines to churn, and it creates friction, which leads to electricity, and it keeps the lights on at your grandma's house and the heat and all that stuff. But the Democrats are against that because the fish, right? It's like the old existential question. And because the fish. So they don't like nuclear, and they're against that. They won't let you build that. The U.S. Navy's been running little nuclear power plants on ships for about 50 years now without a single incident. But there was a Jane Fonda movie. So they're against nuclear, they're against hydroelectric, and they're against fossil fuels. Basically, they've got the Gilligan's Island model in plan where the professor gets on the bicycle and, rides the bicycle, and that's all the electricity you get. That's the Democrat Party's plan. And solar panels, which are filled with toxins, and the toxins are mined in Africa and Latin America by child slave labor. We didn't even get to that story, Michael, a couple of days ago about the African child slaves mining the minerals to get the elements for your electric car battery, right? But the Democrats are fine with that. They are the party of slavery, after all. So we got that going. All right, but there's more to get to as well. The lead story in the Washington Post today, next to alarms for a planet on edge, flooding, fires, and lethal heat. It is What isn't, experts say, is when we'll act. We have to act to change the climate. We're going to change the climate. Just ask the Democrats. And again, what's the rest of the world doing? That doesn't matter. We're going to wreck this place. But the lead story in the Post today, fresh signs of easing prices, which is, of course, the opposite of the truth. That's not true. Have you seen fresh signs of easing prices? Inflation closer to normal levels. Closer to normal levels. That sounds very encouraging, doesn't it? Economic picture starkly different from a year ago. Yeah, it's starkly different from a year ago. That's your Democrat Party. And that, the Washington Post in this case. Pretty amazing stuff. So the only problem with that is it's not true. Maybe some official government number somewhere says that inflation is better than ever, but don't believe it because these people lie all the time. That's one of the issues that we've got in Washington these days is that the place is full of liars. They got these lying Sacagawea types all over the place. Man, I'm telling you. So we got that. We got that going for, and I will explain. Also, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. We've got a committee for a responsible federal budget? Yes, we do. They're trying. They're trying. Haven't made a lot of headway yet, but they're working on it. They've got the right idea in mind here. Inflation Reduction Act, the multi-trillion-dollar whatever, Joe Biden. Climate budget. It turns out that they told us that the climate, the money for the climate in the Inflation Reduction Act, which has nothing to do with the weather, was going to be $400 billion. That's, they said, the original projected cost was going to be $400 billion. Now they tell us, well, really it's going to be $660 billion. $660 billion. Does that also pay off student debt to buy votes the old-fashioned way, the Chicago way? No, but they said, it's going to cost $400 billion, the climate budget in the Inflation Reduction Act. Right, sure, yeah. And we're going to have the cocaine budget in the Schwinn Bicycle Act because it's also completely unrelated. But that's just part of the big lie. They lie to us all the time. So we got lots of stuff going on with those items there. But that's not all because there's a lot more. We've got lots of Joe Biden. And we had the big FBI hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday. Big FBI hearing. And Christopher Wray, who is one of my brothers in Chicago, texted me this morning that he was a lying Sacagawea. He texted me, and he spelled Sacagawea correctly. Lying Sacagawea. In fact, I think it was my brother that originated the turn of phrase, the lying Sacagawea, because he's got kids, and he had kids at home. So clean up his act. So he started with the Lion Sacagawea. And I believe that's where that came from. my brother coming up with that just to keep it clean around the kids. So we got that going. And, and RNC research. See, the Washington Post, I know there's another thing here. There it is, fresh signs of easing prices. Inflation closer to normal. Remember normal? But RNC, the Republican National Committee research people, put out a tweet yesterday with a graphic, and they explained since Biden took office, prices are up by 16.6%, and wages are down by 3%. Wait a minute. So real inflation, that is prices, the things that you buy and what they cost. Prices are up by 16.6%. That would be real inflation. That would be actual inflation, RNC research. And real wages are down 3%. Down 3%. But why would the Democrats care about that? They don't. They're changing the weather. Changing the weather. Also, artificial intelligence. Who better to talk about artificial intelligence than Kamala Harris? Honestly, I think she defines artificial intelligence. In the dictionary, when you look it up, there's a little picture of her next to it. Also, Ring cameras, those doorbell cameras. Turns out they're racist. They are racist, according to the Democrats at Wired Magazine. And in Washington, D.C., Black Restaurant Week starts today. Black Restaurant Week. No White Restaurant Week. That's not this week. No Chinese food restaurant week. No, none of that. No Latino Restaurant Week. They don't have that. And PBS at taxpayer expense, the Panhandler Broadcasting System. The Statue of Liberty is entangled with whiteness. Not that these people are racist about anything or anything like that. And we are at 888-630-9625. Hey, Chris here with some exciting news. Now you can listen to me live on the WMAL app. Doesn't matter if you're in your car, in the office, on the go. The WMAL app delivers crystal clear around-the-clock news coverage anywhere with cell service or Wi-Fi. So don't miss a second of your favorite shows. Download the WMAL app today on the Apple App Store or at Google Play Store. Now, the Republican Party has to come out and rebut and refute things that the White House says because so many of the things that they say are untrue. And they knowingly tell these untruths, which my mother used to refer to as lies. She was very disapproving of lies. One of the many reasons I grew up as truthful a person as I am today. Yeah, so the White House put out a statement. It is a false statement. They have a Twitter account, and they haven't been banned or anything for disinformation and misinformation, but we should look at that. The White House said on July 11th, inflation-adjusted income is up 3.5% since POTUS took office, and low-wage workers have seen the largest wage gains over the last year, helping power our economy. Bidenomics is growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, whatever their bumper sticker is. Then they change genders. It's kind of a weird thing. But a note was added to this, which says the federal government is kind of a fact check. The federal government data does not support this growth claim. Inflation-adjusted hourly earnings were $11.41 per hour in January 2021 when Biden took office. And in its latest release, May of 2023, is $11.03. That's from the U.S. government, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This represents a decline of 3.3%, not an increase of 3.5%, as the White House claims. Furthermore, regardless of the Washington Post front page lead story saying that, hey, yay, inflation is great, everything is wonderful, the Republican National Committee laid the case out with graphics and everything. Increases in transportation costs and energy costs, in shelter costs, in food costs. And I know that all of us have noticed all of these. I've noticed them, certainly gasoline and everything else. But RNC points out since Biden took office, prices are up by 16.6%. That's in a year. All right? Spill the wine. Dig that girl. Bum, 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 bum. Spill the wine. Dig that girl. Dig that girl. All right, Ring cameras, the Statue of Liberty, transgender Democrats, Maxine Waters, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. coming up. Also, the climate panic. You know, it's summertime. It's always in the northern hemisphere, so it's when it's summertime in the southern hemisphere, you notice there isn't a lot of panic about global warming and climate change because, you know, it's like talk about flyover country. They don't even fly over those countries. They ignore them completely. But when it affects New York, like the Canadian forest fire smoke, when it's the Midwest and Detroit and Chicago, they're being, choked by the Canadian smoke. It's not a news story. I talked about this at the time. I was in Chicago. The smoke was everywhere. I came back here. It's not in the news. Then, days later, the smoke reached New York, and suddenly it was front page news everywhere because the news organization headquarters are in New York. You know, the arrogance and the how provincial New Yorkers are. I mean, honestly. And then it's big news. Now, today it's going to be hot in Washington, D.C. I think it's going to be 95 degrees, maybe even 96 degrees. That's because it's summertime in Washington, where all the old apartment buildings built before air conditioning, and they have these, what do you call them, the slatted doors, like, Venetian blind. I know they got a name for them, those doors. In the apartment buildings, you can leave the front door to your apartment open because there's a second door, almost like a storm door, with wooden slats, right, to allow the airflow to go through because it's hot here in the summertime, and it has been forever. But, how long have we been measuring temperature accurately in Washington, D.C.? Maybe a couple of lifetimes, I guess. But here's the Washington Post today. Earth is at its hottest in thousands of years. Here's how we know because they're guessing, and here's how we know. We know because the Democrat Party has an agenda here, and they want to take away your money and your stuff and your freedoms and your liberties and your property and limit your life because they're going to make the weather better. It's not the weather, it's the climate. Yeah, right. And what does that have to do with the weather? That stumps him every time. What's a woman? That stumps him. How many genders are there? That stumps him every time, too. Stump the chump. We should have a game show when libs call in, ask them tough questions like that because they don't know. Earth is at its hottest in thousands of years. Here's how we know. Observations are enough to make scientists confident that the current period of warming is exceptional. Scott Dance is typing up the story on behalf of his party, the Democrat Party, because it's real hot, Observations from both satellites, it's because the satellite pictures from thousands of years ago clearly reveal that it was different than it is now. You know who put those satellites up there? The patriarchy. That's who. You know who? White guys. Some Asian guys, too. White guys and constellations of satellites layered one on top of another. Weather satellites, communication satellites, intelligence satellites, all kinds of constellations, satellites all over the place. The patriarchy. That's who. You're welcome. Okay. I'd like a little thank you every now and then, wouldn't you? A little thank you. Michael wants a little thank you every now and then, too. Just, you're welcome. Observations from both satellites and the Earth's surface are indisputable. Nothing is indisputable. Democrats have taught us that, haven't they? The planet has warmed rapidly over the last 44 years. As far back now, 44 years ago, they were telling us about the ice age that was coming, and the armadillos were headed south, running from the glaciers that were going to be racing in our direction in no time at all. Time magazine cover story, the coming ice age, and it's good. Yeah, you think maybe there's a pendulum here of any kind? You think the great ball of fire in the sky has anything to do with it? Or, the secular apocalypse is all man-made, and therefore only they can save us from us. See, that's how that goes. Their invisible man in the sky, since they're godless, is H2O. It's CO2. It's not H2O. It's water. That's CO2. And I just went and got a glass of water.
Warm periods like ours last only 10,000 years, but ours has already lasted 12,000. So if the rhythm is right, we are over ready for a return of the ice. Experts like Reeve Bryson, the head of the biggest meteorological department in the world in Wisconsin, believe that since 1945, that has been in progress. We're returning to an ice age.
That's right. We're returning to an ice age. Howard K. Smith, who was a very authoritative journalist at the time, and he knew, and the most authoritative climate researchers in the world, they were in Wisconsin at the time. Wisconsin. And they knew that the ice age was coming because these warming periods and cooling periods. So there it is. Now, of course, the observations from both satellites and the Earth's surface are indisputable. They're indisputable. And it's warmed rapidly over the past 44 years. As far back as 1850, data from weather stations, very, very reliable data from 1850, the weather stations, all over the globe, especially all over the globe, very, very reliable, make clear the Earth's average temperature has been rising. I've always been a little chilly anyway. A little warmer is probably fine, don't you think? In recent days, as the Earth, and recent days, the past week or so, as the Earth has reached its highest average temperature in recorded history, scientists have made a bolder claim, they love their colons. It may well be warmer than any time in the last 125,000 years. The key word there, anybody? Keyword there? May. See, that's correct. May is it's a guess. It's a scientific guess. It's the wag. I spent a lot of time. I spent 10 years at the Pentagon, right, as a journalist covering the military and the intelligence community. My office was in the Pentagon. It's where I went to work every day for 10 years. And they had what they called a wag. What's your best wag on this? Wag is a wild-ass guess. It's a wild-ass guess. That's a wag. What's your wag on this? And then there's, it's not just a wag, they would say. It's a swag. Well, what's your swag on this? That's a scientific wild-ass guess. See, that's you got your swags and your wags. That's part of the lexicon over there. But maybe the hottest, maybe any time in the last 125,000 years. Now, for how long? What is human history, recorded history, since we've been writing stuff down and things like that? Jesus Christ walked the earth about 2,000 years ago. And let's say 4,000, let's go 6,000 years. But they got 125,000 years on their weather records here because somebody drilled a hole in the ice and they pulled up a core sample and they said, oh, look, see, now we know. Tracing climatic fluctuations back centuries and millennia is less simple and precise than checking records from satellites or thermometers. Oh, thanks for that. That's because I wouldn't have been aware of that if I hadn't read that in the Washington Post. It involves poring through everything from ancient diaries to lake bed sentiments to tree trunk rings. See, right? This is like medieval science. It's, Theodoric of York. If the witch floats, then she's a witch. If she sinks, then she's not a witch. She drowns, but she's not a witch. See, that's the that's the thing with your Democrat Party and their science.
Who are you who are so wise in the ways of science?
Forbes magazine has a story also. July 4th, the headline says, was Earth's hottest day in over 100,000 years. See, that's the hottest day in over 100,000 years. Breaking record for 2 days in a row. It's breaking the records all over the place. And I don't know about you, but I'm terrified. I'm gonna go get some Freon. I'm gonna get some. Well, you can still get it because they want to take away air conditioning. This is one of their plans, is to take away air conditioning. I don't think they like the human species. What do you think? So the 4th of July was the hottest day on Earth in as many as 125,000 years. Forbes magazine, they have the same thing that the Washington Post has. Breaking a record set the day before. See? It was set the day. First, there was a record, and then on the 3rd of July. Then on the 4th of July, it was even hotter. Hottest 125,000 years. How do they know? Well, they asked Theodoric, man of medieval science, and he knows. As the return of El Nino weather pattern, isn't it racist to always bring El Nino? And that's a Latino term, and it might be gendered too. Is that gendered? Because we got El Nino and El Niña, right? That's the boy weather pattern and the girl weather pattern, and we're now aren't they Latinx now? Shouldn't it be El Ninx? El Nintinx. Joe Biden could explain it to us. Maybe Kamala could explain it to us. The El Nino weather pattern collides with soaring temperatures at the start of summer. Researchers said, they got researchers saying this stuff, so it's got to be true. I don't know about you, but I am already in a panic. I really am. And it's going to be hot today, which just proves the case. But when it's hot in the southern hemisphere, right, when it's wintertime in the northern hemisphere, summertime in the southern hemisphere, it's not really a topic of conversation with the New York media. But then summer comes, and they're always in a panic because it's the squirrel brain thing. Got the squirrel brain thing. All right, we haven't taken a phone call yet. We should go to the telephones. And and also I mentioned the White House tweet where they said that inflation-adjusted income is up 3.5%, and they tweeted that out. And then it's the Twitter. They have this community fact-check thing, and they said, well, actually, according to your own government records and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's the opposite of the truth. So they posted it and attached it to the White House tweet, which is pretty funny. What a world. What a life. Okay, let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Richard calling from Manassas, Virginia. Ricardo, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Grazie. Thanks for taking my call, Chris. Just want to say, so what? Storms are down. We went an entire decade without a single hurricane making landfall, but that goes unnoticed. And now they're complaining about El Nino. So it's now man-made undersea volcanic activity that's influencing the climate, because that's what causes El Nino is undersea volcanism heats the water, creating more water vapor in the atmosphere. So now we're responsible for undersea volcanic activity too, I suppose.
Definitely, and it's because of you. And you probably drive an SUV or something like that, and that makes you...
Actually, I'm in a Prius right now because they get really, really good gas mileage. I don't care about the... now, I will say the hybrid's the way to go if you're going to go fuel efficient like that. The battery car is more devastating to the environment and the climate than the gas-powered car. So I'd stick with either the hybrid or the gas-powered car first.
That's fair enough. I respect that completely. A good friend of mine who's a police officer got a Prius because he lived like 50 miles outside of the city of Washington, and it's a big deal. And with Democrats, the gas prices double and they go up and up. And Richard, you mentioned the hurricanes, and you're 100% correct, of course. During the Obama administration, the United States broke a record for going for the longest period of time, the greatest number of months, without having a major hurricane make landfall. That means a Category 3 or Category 4 hurricane. Category 1, Category 2, not so worried about. But we broke the record during the Obama administration for going the longest period of time in 125,000 years. Just kidding, I made that up because there's no way anybody could know what kind of hurricanes there were.
Satellites.
Yeah,
the satellites that the Romans used during the birth of Christ was recording all that temperature, and the Neanderthals and the Australopithecine launching those satellites 125,000 years ago. Thank God for those guys.
That's exactly right. In Cro-Magnon man's weather records, very advanced, very sophisticated, and of course they're satellites. They were made of rock and wood, which is very interesting, Richard. That how did the Neanderthal man make satellites out of wood and rocks? Yeah,
it's the little bird flying up and down from the Flintstones. Hey, it's hot down here. And they fly back up to the satellite.
The Flintstones live. I love the fact that the Flintstones live on. Richard, thank you for the call, and it's 100% correct. I think it was in 2015 that we established the record, in recorded history, but recorded weather history doesn't go back that far. It doesn't go back 125,000 years. And the fact that they pretend it does means that you probably shouldn't take them too seriously and believe the things that they say, because they're a bit wacky when they say things like that. And especially played Howard K. Smith there in, when was that? Probably 1979. Howard K. Smith saying, here comes the Ice Age, and we're all have to panic because the Ice Age is coming. And here we are, a short lifetime later, and now we all have to panic because, there it is. Yeah, but we set a record. The news media, they were blaming the Koch brothers for hurricanes at that point. You remember that? Because they're insane. But they're, at least they're political fanatics. And they've politicized everything from, gender in kindergarten to every warm day anywhere on the planet. Not that they're nuts or anything. Speaking of which, you got Joe Biden. Did you know that he's grandfatherly? He's grandfatherly, and it turns out that's a really positive thing. And it's a big win for the world. That's coming up.
There's a theory advanced by climatologists that the last 2 years of battering by winter means that an ice age is returning to the Earth with glaciers down to the Mason-Dixon line and freezing temperatures south of that.
We've got a whole bunch. We got a whole bunch because Democrats are out of their cages again. Here is CBS News. CBS News. Joe Biden just got, I think he's just back from Europe. I think he's back. Didn't stop anywhere along the way, did he? Iceland. There's a volcano going in Iceland. I want to go up there and go to the volcano. Gushing red lava, bubbling red lava, spewing into the air. Kind of fun. My best girl and I went to Iceland several years ago now. Cool place, great place. Like to go back for the Northern Lights. Hey, isn't tonight supposed to be the Northern Lights all the way down to Maryland? Tonight, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern, I think. The Northern Lights, probably climate change. Probably got everything to do with climate change. But that's what they're saying. I think read it the other day, 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. or something. You may see the Northern Lights as far south as Maryland. You got to be in a dark place and everything. I don't live in a dark place. But here is CBS News. The headline, because Biden was going around Europe bumping into everything like a jellyfish because he has the IQ of a jellyfish. And the King Charles III had to grab him by the elbow and walk him around. And the big boss, the president, prime minister of Lithuania, had to guide him around. And he got Volodymyr Zelensky's name wrong, called him Vladimir, and the White House cleaned up the transcript for him as though he never said it for the historical record.
I shouldn't be so familiar.
He shouldn't be so familiar, but they're dating. So, but here is so he made a buffoon of himself, and he is Cluster Bomb Biden, right, or just Cluster Joe for short. But CBS News headline, because he performed as a doddering fool performs, the media has to get to work spinning that for him and for the Democrat Party because there's an election next year, And the headline at CBS News is Biden's, quote, grandfatherly appeal, end quote, may be asset overseas at NATO summit. His grandfatherly appeal may be an asset overseas. And there's headline after headline about his grandfatherly appeal. CBS News and NBC News had one, and a whole bunch of media outlets all over the United States of America. They're spinning his doddering foolery and telling us that it's grandfatherly and it's charming. It's an asset.